Hey crafters, Lisa here from Fun Stuff Crafts. So glad you could join me for another Inspiration Friday. So this week I thought it would be a good idea to share with you some lessons learned that I've learned using DTF powder and sheets. I posted a blog post about a month ago on my success on using the product. But since then, I've been getting a lot of questions about the product. And also during that time, I had another company reach out to me and wanted me to try out their product. So I thought I would combine a video on how to use DTF, testing out their product, but also talking about some of the lessons that I learned actually using the DTF for sublimation. So before we get started, let me tell you how great it can turn out. Here's an example of a shirt that I made using DTF. And this is a 100% cotton shirt, and you can see the colors look just great. It feels nice. I've washed it and it washes up really nice. But there are some things you really need to know about using DTF. The very first thing that I learned as I was working with the product is first, you have to have DTF sheets and DTF powder. So let me show you what I've got here. I got this from a company, Sublimation, and they're offered on Amazon, so I'll make sure I put the link down below for you. This is the powder that I tried out on this tutorial, and it works really great. And then these are the sheets. Now these sheets are really large, and I'll show you how I cut them down and I use them. So you definitely need the powder and the sheets to do DTF. But you also need, just like anytime you're dealing with sublimation, you need to have sublimation ink in your printer. Now, I personally like to use Cosmo ink, and that's what I have. So I converted my Epson Workforce 7210, and I put Cosmo ink into it. So there's lots of tutorials out there on YouTube on how to convert your printer, but that's what worked best for me. Now, some people will buy a sublimation printer that was built straight for sublimation, and you can definitely do that. But you need the sublimation ink, you need the sublimation printer, and I'm pointing over here because my printer is sitting right there. And then you need the DTF powder and the transfer sheets. And of course, you need a design. So I grabbed this design off of Canva. I use Canva a lot when I'm putting my designs together. Change the colors up a little bit, but you can grab a design wherever you want. And then a couple other things that you need with DTF is one of the things that I found, these sheets. Now, these sheets are, and it says right here on the sheet here, or the plastic print side. So there is a glossy side and there is a matte side to it. You're gonna print on the matte side. But what I found is this paper is way too slick to go through the printer and pick up the ink with your design. So I'll show you in the video how I use a piece of paper and masking tape to help my paper go through. So that's one of the lessons that I've learned. The other lesson that I learned is print settings. Normally, whenever I use sublimation, I always do a high quality print setting. I want the most amount of ink. I want it to turn out great. What I have found, especially with my Epson's 7210, is I need to use a normal print quality. So that is something I've had to do. Now, I will tell you guys, what I recommend anybody do before you go trying to do something on a shirt is do some test runs. So I cut just some pieces of canvas, 100% cotton canvas, and I started testing out different heat settings that work best with my heat press and with my ink. And I found that the end result for me was 385 degrees for 30 seconds. Works out great to get the design that I'm using. But I really recommend that you do some tests. grab an old t-shirt if you're going to do it on a t-shirt. I wanted to do some makeup bags, and so that's why I did these. I grabbed these at Hobby Lobby, and I think, yeah, these are $1.49 at Hobby Lobby. I can't even make it for $1.49. So I thought these would be really cute to do. But I didn't want to start using those, so I grabbed some canvas and just did it. So let's see. Got my cheat sheet here from my blog post, because I do have a blog post already for you guys you can refer to too. So we talked about the print settings. We talked about the sheets. We talked about the heat setting. The other thing that I learned with this Sublimation powder is they want you to preset your design. Now in the first video I did, we did not preset the design at all. And what I mean by presetting it is once you print your design, you put it on your paper, you put the powder on it, you actually set this underneath the heat press without engaging the heat press for 60 seconds to let it set up. Then you put it on the garment. So I'll show you all that in the video, but that was another lesson learned. The other big one I had, and I learned this one the hard way because I did ruin a few shirts before I decided to try the canvas, is cold peel. You need to let the garment cool down completely before you peel off the transfer sheet. And then you guys, it turned out great. I mean, look at the colors that I've got here. It has just worked out so nice. I really love it. And I love being able to use 100% cotton whenever I'm doing this. The only other thing that I would say is a good thing to have also is, I call it blowout paper all the time, and all of this is butcher paper. You want to have this to protect your heat press. You can also use parchment paper, and I use that too. I just picked up these pre-cut ones. They work good also. So I think that covers most of the supplies. So I just really wanted to take a little bit of time before we jump into this video. I'm actually going to join you right when I'm getting ready to print my design and show you what I mean by changing that print setting to be a normal quality versus a fine quality print. So give me a second. I'll join you over there, and I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Okay, crafters, let's start out by looking at the design I've chosen. So I've already put this design together, and I'm making a shirt for my husband. And so this is a picture of his 1932 Deuce Coupe, and so we're going to make a shirt for him. So before we actually print it, I want to show you a couple things that I have learned when I am making this with the DTF powder. So to begin with, I am going to go ahead and select my correct printer. Now I have a Workforce, an Epson Workforce 7210, and I do have Cosmo ink loaded with it. Now I'm going to go ahead and print it on 8.5 by 11. One of the things I like to make sure to do is I always go down to my print settings. Now your settings for your printer are probably going to be a little bit different than mine if you're not using a 7210. But one of the first things I like to do is I like to make sure it's mirror image. So that way, if it's got words on it, we definitely want to make sure it's mirror image. The other thing I want to show you guys is the print quality. Now this is one of my very first lessons I learned with the DTF powder. Normally when I'm doing sublimation, I always like to go for a quality print or a fine print. What I have found with the DTF print is that it puts too much ink on the paper. So I just stick with a normal print quality. So I want to go back to my preview, and I just want to make sure right now this is printing at 59%. I want to make it just a little bit bigger. And actually for this one, I'm going to turn this one landscape, and I'm going to see what happens when I make it 75%. And sometimes I just like to play with how is it going to fit on my paper. So I know that I don't want it to go quite to the end. So I'm going to go ahead and go with a 65%. I think that's going to fit on my paper perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this over to my printer to print. But before we do that, I want to show you how I load my paper. So give me a second and I'll meet you over at the printer, and I want to show you how I load it before I hit this print button. So when I got this paper sent to me, the first thing I noticed on it is it says print side. So you want to make sure you can tell the difference between the print side and the non-print side. So what I did is, if you feel this paper, it is more of a matte finish on top, and it's a shiny finish where it is not the print side. So the very first thing I did is, these are larger pieces than what I'm going to be using. So I'm just going to use my paper cutter here, and I'm going to cut this down to size. So I'm going to cut this down to an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Actually, it's going to be 8.5 by a little bit more, but I'm more concerned about the 11 side, or excuse me, the 8.5 side. So what I'm doing is I've got my paper here, and then I've got that other piece that I can use on another design that I'll be doing. And then what we're going to do, because this paper has a hard time going through the printer, now this is my matte side, I am going to help it out by attaching it to a piece of copy paper. And so what I do is I just very carefully, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's just the DTF sheet is just a little bit lower, and I'm just going to take some painter's tape and I just tape it right on there, and then I'm going to turn that over, and I'm just going to attach it just like that. So now my DTF sheet is right here, and my my paper is here. The glossy side, which is the non-print side, is on the bottom. This is the print side. Now for my printer, I'm going to load it so it goes in this way, and then when it comes through, it's going to print on top. So let's hop over to the printer and I'll show you loading it. Okay, so here we are at my Workforce 7210, and I'm going to open up my tray, and mine is going to feed through my tray number 2. And so I'm going to put the paper with the copy paper face up, and I'm going to load that right in my printer. And then I'm going to go ahead and shut it. I make sure that I bring out my tray, because if I don't, one, this might fall on the floor, and you do not want that to have happen. Or the other thing I have happen is it starts to get crinkled up, and you don't want that. So make sure you do that. So let me hop over and hit the print button, and we'll get this going. Okay, so my printer just is getting a print job, and we're gonna let that come off. And I want to show you what it looks like when it comes off. That's one of the reasons why I want to give you this view. I think it's really important for you guys to see what it looks like first. So it's coming off. And there you can see that is what it looks like. So let's hop back over to the heat press and we'll do our next step. Okay, so we're back from the printer, and I want to show you guys that when the print job comes down and the rollers come, there are some little lines right here. And it's really hard to see, but there's some faint lines. We're going to take care of some of those lines after we set this image. And what I mean by setting this image, in my first video that I did using DTF, the company that I used did not require you to do a set. This company that I'm using recommends that you set your image. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the DTF powder, and you can see I've got it right here, and I'm going to sprinkle it all over this image. And don't worry about too much there, because you're going to dump it right back in the bag. You guys will notice I do have a sheet of paper underneath, and then I've got my image. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to lift up my image, and I'm going to hit off any extra, and you can see very faintly, if you guys look close, it kind of looks like a sand mist all along there. Now what I'm going to do is what they call setting the image. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna set it on my heat press. So let me just change a view so you guys can see that. But before I do that, I want to get this stuff all put away. So I'll show you how easy it is. I just take my bag and I just use my paper as a funnel, and I'm going to dump that all back in. So that way I'm not wasting any of the powder. I do tape that back up because I don't want anything to fall. So let me change my camera. Now the heat press, and I have a swing away heat press. So one of the things I want to make sure I do is not let the top of my heat press touch the image at all. Really, really important. So I'm going to loosen up my settings a little bit, and I can feel it rubbing right there. So I'm actually going to take my pad out of mine, and I'm going to set it off to the side. And then what we're going to do is just lay a piece of paper in there, and then I'm going to take the image and I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to lift up my heat press, and there's still a gap there, and I'm going to let it sit at 385 degrees for 60 seconds. Okay, so my 60 seconds are up. I'm going to move this away, and we're going to take a look at our image. And you can see how I can see a little bit here that it maybe didn't get it as much. So I'm gonna take it just for a little bit longer, and I'm gonna bring that, I think I'm gonna turn my design a little bit different, and I'm gonna bring that over and just let that hover. Just for probably about 10 to 15 more seconds. I just wanna make sure that is all adhered there. And then we will press it on the shirt. And then what I'm going to show you guys is a picture of what it looks like with the DTF or just straight sublimation on a 100% cotton shirt. So I want to go ahead and put my mat back in. And I'm going to put my blowout paper back. And I'm going to grab my shirt. And this is an extra large Gideon shirt. And I am going to put it in, and what I'm going to do now is I am just going to preheat my shirt. So I'm going to put a piece of blowout paper, and when I say blowout paper, you guys, I'm just meaning butcher paper. It's just to protect my press. And now I've got to put my pad back in, and I've got to readjust my pressure. So I'm just going to do that for about 10 seconds. And then we're going to go ahead and get this pressed. And I'm only going to press this for 35 seconds. But one thing I want to do that I forgot to show you guys is I am going to trim off the bottom. If you guys can see very faintly, there are some lines right there. I do not want those lines to transfer to my shirt. So I am going to just cut off the bottom. And there is my design. Okay, so we're just going to eyeball putting this on here. Normally I would measure it up a little bit closer, but we are just going to eyeball putting this one on. And I'm going to adjust my time to be 35 seconds. So let me just do that. And then we're going to let this go for 35 seconds. And then I will show you what this looks like. Okay, time's up. Let's take a look and see what our colors look like. Well, right now it looks absolutely beautiful. I'll show it to you guys. So look at that. Colors are just bright and vibrant. But what we're going to do now is we're going to let this cool off. And then as soon as it's cooled off, I will join you back. Let's peel this and see what it looks like. This is cool to the touch, and I'm just going to slowly peel it off. And I always like to peel from the top. Oh, wow. Look at those. Look at that. Black is so nice and bold. Let's check out the colors now. Oh, the colors look great. Look at that, you guys. Now, I do think that right in this area, it could have came off a little bit better, but kind of looks old school. Yes, look at that. I love what that looks like. Now I want to show you guys, I did the exact same design on the exact same type of shirt with just sublimation, which you can get it to work, right? But look at the difference in color. So that's just straight sublimation, and look at the difference in color there, you guys. This is with the DTF, and this is with just straight sublimation. I'll show you another one that I did for myself, and look at how great those colors came out. And that again is a heavy cotton shirt, and just look at those colors. And it feels really good, you guys. It feels really nice. Now I've done a few of these on sweatshirts, and I've washed them multiple times, and I've had no issue with any design coming off. So I hope you enjoyed this Inspiration Friday using DTF transfer powder and transfer sheets, and learning some of my lessons learned. Make sure you check out my blog post. I go through step by step some of my lessons learned in using this new medium for sublimation.